Home Gas is a proud sponsor of CMR's Storm Ready 2022, as we stand ready to support you before, during, and after any storm. Here at Home Gas, our team of managers, field experts, and customer service agents work overtime to ensure that you are covered during hurricanes. With over 65 years of experience, we have been here with you through tropical depressions and major hurricanes like no one else. The same real-world experienced team that saw you through catastrophic Hurricane Ivan is still here, poised to continue offering the best service before, during, and after the storm. Contact us today at 345-949-7474 or email info@homegas.net.
Thank you for joining me on this Sunday. I'm meteorologist Brian Shields. Thank you for your trust in the system, especially Cayman Islands and Jamaica. In Jamaica, I've been optimistic the last few days. We'll get some of the bands of rain. Here's the broader picture of the Atlantic, but I appreciate you sharing this channel to get the right information out across Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. And as expected, the heaviest weather, the tropical storm conditions offshore of Jamaica, but a closer look in the Caribbean, of course, we're going to get some of the bands of rain. And isolated flooding, flash flooding will be possible because you know how it goes when you get some of those bands of rain across the Caribbean. We get those downpours. Now, this map, very important to me. That's why I do this channel. That's why I appreciate you sharing this channel. Safety is the reason I do this. So full preps ongoing across the Cayman Islands, back into Cuba, and then we're monitoring this system as far west as New Orleans and as far east as the Bahamas because down the road it's so uncertain, and initial preps are ongoing as you swing up toward Florida. So again, the long-term projection of this system, very uncertain, and look at why. The yellow, that is the American model. That takes us up to, say, where Hurricane Michael made landfall. That's going to take it up toward the Panhandle. With that said, the European model is insistent on driving this into the Sarasota, Anna Maria Island area and back through Tampa, then through Central and North Florida. That is a huge difference down the road. But in the short term, look at Cuba, western Cuba. They all drive an intensifying hurricane right over the western end of Cuba. And again, just kind of skimming by us in the Cayman Islands. So I'm going to break this down further in this video. Both of the models and the steering conditions for the system. Right now in Jamaica, there are no tropical storm watches or warnings, and that's what we've been talking about for about 3 to 4 days on this channel, how that would stay to the south and off to the west, and that's the case, but we still get those outer bands working in. Hurricane warnings are up for Grand Cayman, tropical storm warnings out for our smaller islands, and then lifting up toward Cuba, hurricane watches will become hurricane warnings, and as it moves into Cuba, it may be rapidly intensifying. Worse weather stays well to the east of Belize and even the Yucatan Peninsula, but higher seas, of course. These are the tropical storm force wind probabilities, of course, very high down the road, but more so down the road, we're going to be watching out for the possibility of those hurricane conditions with an intense system. It's going to move over very warm water. So you see that kind of brownish or orangish shading? I'm not even sure what we call it, but those are the hurricane force wind probabilities of anywhere from 50 to 70%. Simply put, as we get into Cuba, we have a very, very high chance of hurricane conditions at this point. I'm going to break that down further. Now, some tropical storm bands trying to work into Jamaica now. Of course, we have that. And then the worst weather Sunday night into Monday, moving into Grand Cayman, Cayman Islands, and then after that, throughout the day on Monday, working its way into Cuba. And then after that, highly uncertain where this system goes. And you can see it right here. Look at this map. It gets crazy down the road, those crazy spaghetti models. Now, the Hurricane Center is really splitting the difference between the western models and the eastern models because it is so uncertain because of those steering conditions. But in the short term, the heaviest core of this will be just to the east, or rather, west, I should say, of Grand Cayman, swinging up toward Cuba and then emerging into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Now, if it's a strong front, that would take this system, which will eventually become a hurricane, and swing it into the peninsula of Florida. That front would just kind of grab it, swing it in a little bit sooner, say by Wednesday, and that's why those initial hurricane preps are ongoing. But the trend yesterday was for a weaker front. and that's why the Hurricane Center has been shifting that track more and more to the west. Now, if it's a weaker front and then high pressure builds into the north, that would take this system, move it into the northeastern Gulf of Mexico as a very powerful hurricane, but then it would slow it down. Then there could be some wind shear that could actually weaken it before landfall. So you see all the variabilities, just so much down the road to kind of think about. But as I always tell folks and tell my friends, it's the good thing about hurricanes is we see them coming. Unlike I always feel for my colleagues having to forecast tornadoes. Those are incredibly tough, but we see this coming, so we'll make those preparations and adjust as necessary. Here's the American model. Let me take you out in time here. This is by the time we get into tonight. Worst weather off to the west of Jamaica, but some of the bands of rain working in. Then tonight and tomorrow, the worst weather moves into Grand Cayman, some tropical storm conditions on the extreme east side of the Cayman Islands, and then at this point tomorrow morning through the day could be a rapidly intensifying system, powerful, potentially major hurricane moving into western Cuba. This is by the time we get into Tuesday morning. And then after that, it becomes uncertain. It will lift to the north, should still be incredibly strong once it passes Cuba. It's not going to lose much steam, could actually get even stronger, and then be in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. At that point, the front may leave and high pressure builds to the north. So then the system would slow down, and then wind shear may actually weaken it a touch down the road. This is by Thursday morning. Then as we go throughout the day, Thursday into Friday, the system would potentially lift up toward the panhandle of Florida and the Big Bend of Florida. That's one scenario down the road. So elsewhere in the Caribbean, scattered showers and storms, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, nothing organized though, which is good. Over toward the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, same thing. All right, here's the European model. Short term, let me just take you out on time. Same thing, core of the weather off to the west of Jamaica. Then this will lift up to the north and get very close to the Cayman Islands, as I mentioned, tonight and especially tomorrow morning. So here's tomorrow morning. That's the worst weather, moving into Grand Cayman and then lifting up to the north, right on track. This is by the time we get into Monday night, pushing from Grand Cayman, lifting up to the north at that point into Cuba. Then as we take you into Cuba, we could have that intensifying hurricane that rolls onshore. And then after that, as I mentioned earlier, the European model, that sees a strong front grabbing this thing and eventually swinging it into the peninsula of Florida on the day on Wednesday. So we're looking at about 3 to 4 days from now. So if it gets in Thank you for joining me on that rolls onshore. And then after that, as I mentioned earlier, the European model, that sees a strong front grabbing this thing and eventually swinging it into the peninsula of Florida on the day on Wednesday. So we're looking at about 3 to 4 days from now. So if it gets into the peninsula of Florida, that would be by about Wednesday into Thursday, because once again, the system would slow, but the Thank you for earlier, the European model, that sees a strong front grabbing this thing and eventually swinging it into the peninsula of Florida on the day on Wednesday. So we're looking at about 3 to 4 days from now. So if it gets into the peninsula of Florida, that would be by about Wednesday into Thursday, because once again, the system would slow. But the American model, again, was off to the west. Now, if this scenario happens, though, we could get some rain bands moving into the northern Bahamas and some tropical storm conditions through the northern Bahamas, but it's still going to be a wait and see. So back to Jamaica, yes, some bands of rain and storms, localized flooding, but the core of the system, south right now, and it will be to the west as we go throughout the day. Just please be mindful of some of those stronger thunderstorms with some of those outer rain bands. Hurricane warnings up. Here's Grand Cayman. We're going to be dealing with power outages. Winds could gust over 80 miles per hour up to about 70 plus. Barefoot Bay over toward the east end, back through Savannah. Very strong winds. We're going to see that flooding coastal flooding, of course. We're in Grand Cayman here. So again, thinking of you, take those preps tonight, be in place, be where you need to be. And then as we get into the eastern zones, we're going to see tropical storm conditions. It's just a matter of the bands of rain, tracking those. Little Cayman, back through West End, Spot Bay, Great Cave, seeing the bands of rain and storms. It just depends on where they set up. But anytime you get a band of rain and storms, you could get those tropical storm conditions. All right, what's next? As we get into the week ahead, early in the week, Cuba. East side, we're good. The west side, we're going to have winds over 100 miles per hour with an intensifying hurricane. And then that next landfall point, very uncertain, as you could see, once this emerges into the Gulf. And it should get even stronger as it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. But then we'll see it kind of slow down at the tail end of the forecast period. So
Home Gas is a proud sponsor of CMR Storm Ready 2022, as we stand ready to support you before, during, and after any storm. Here at Home Gas, our team of managers, field experts, and customer service agents work overtime to ensure that you are covered during hurricanes. With over 65 years of experience, we have been here with you through tropical depressions and major hurricanes like no one else. The same real-world experienced team that saw you through catastrophic Hurricane Ivan is still here, poised to continue offering the best service before, during, and after the storm. Contact us today at 345-949-7474 or email info@homegas.net.